that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
Today, also an important milestone and moment in history for Georgia. Senators Raphael, Warnock, and John Ossoff sworn in by Vice President Kamala Harris. That was the moment just over an hour ago when Georgia's two new U.S. senators switched control of the Senate from Republicans to Democrats. Reverend Warnock is now serving as the first black U.S. senator in Georgia history. Joe Hankey talked to Martin Luther King III about the hope that brings.
Ebenezer Baptist Church behind me is where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. served as pastor. And those are footsteps that Reverend Raphael Warnock followed in. Now, King's son tells me he hopes Warnock can serve as a bridge between the pulpit and Washington. Today, Reverend Raphael Warnock joins a list of only 10 other black U.S. senators throughout history, including notable names such as former President Barack Obama and, as of this afternoon, Vice President Kamala Harris. Warnock is a pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, like King, whose civil rights work inspired countless people in the black community. Now, King's son believes Warnock is also serving as an inspiration by being a black senator from Georgia.
It opens doors. He's the first, but it certainly means that other young African-American young men and young women can also aspire to run for the United States Senate.
Warnock even reflected on the inspiration of his election during his election night speech.
With hope, hard work, and the people by our side, anything is possible.
At Ebenezer, Warnock preaches to a predominantly black congregation and, in the model of Dr. King, advocates for equal rights for all. MLK III wants to now see Warnock turn those sermons into legislation.
Not just talk about Medicaid expansion, to be a part of creating legislation that ensures that everyone in the state of Georgia has health care, that ensures that we can begin to create a full employment economy for our state and our nation.
Warnock's place in history is thanks in part to the dedicated work by a list of Georgia organizations who registered new voters and then made sure they voted. King believes it is a successful roadmap for underrepresented communities in other states to find change.
That same apparatus can be created, I believe, in North Carolina and South Carolina and Mississippi and other southern states. And when that is done and voters are touched and understand the importance of coming out to vote, perhaps we will see changes throughout the South.
John Ossoff, Georgia's first Jewish U.S. senator, took his oath this afternoon, holding a book of Hebrew scripture once owned by Rabbi Jacob Rothschild. The Atlanta faith leader was a civil rights activist and a close ally of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He and fellow Democrat Reverend Raphael Warnock often campaigned together during the 66-day runoff campaign, highlighting parallel civil rights histories. 11 Alive's Doug Richards has more.
The civil rights struggles of African Americans in Georgia got a boost from a key moment in Georgia's Jewish history more than 60 years ago. In 1958, white supremacists planted 50 sticks of dynamite in the temple, Atlanta's most prominent Jewish house of worship. Though nobody was injured, the blast badly damaged the synagogue and shook the city's Jewish community to its core. Around that time, the temple's rabbi, Jacob Rothschild, had struck up a friendship with Martin Luther King Jr. When white Christians in Atlanta rallied around the temple following the bombing, Rothschild, in turn, tried to rally them to King's civil rights movement, with some success, launching an alliance among many Jews and blacks that outlived Dr. King and Rabbi Rothschild. More than a half-century later, Raphael Warnock, who preaches at King's pulpit, campaigned with John Ossoff, a temple attendee. And together, Ossoff and Warnock became the first Jew and the first African American from Georgia to serve in the U.S. Senate.